We are a week out from the NBA draft. There's still so much to get to, and free agency is not far behind. So today we're going to focus on free agency with our pal Keith Smith. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is June 15th, 2023, 1 week to the NBA draft. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the site expert and editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we are not going to talk about the NBA draft. We are going to talk about free agency and the other moves surrounding the draft. The draft plays a role in it. That the Magic will be making this offseason. Obviously, a huge offseason for the Magic with Keith Smith of Spotrac. We'll bring him in here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So let's bring in our guest, the great Keith Smith of Spotrac. Covers all things NBA transactions. He's the guy that I turn to whenever I have a collective bargaining agreement question or anything like that. We'll get to that in a minute, but before we do that, the pleasantries. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. This is one of my favorite times of year where, week out from the draft, things are really starting to pick up. We're getting all those rumors of Team X could trade, pick Y, and, this team's trying to trade up and all those things. And then we're getting all the free agency stuff and option decisions are happening and contract guarantees will start coming in here in the next week or two. And it's just a great time of year. It all comes. It's like drinking from a fire hose the minute the finals ends. It's like, here we go. No other sport is like this as far as, they play their championship and immediately move into their offseason. But it's a lot of fun.
Basketball never stops, and that's the great thing about the NBA. There's always something to talk about, which is why I still go 5 days a week until August. And even then, with the World Cup coming up this summer and the Magic having so many guys in the World Cup, it's going to be it does not stop. And obviously, we are now sitting a week away from the NBA draft. A lot of things are going to be crystal clear for this Magic team, especially. You and I both know. I bring you on for the trade deadline. Deadlines create action. Deadlines are what kind of spurs these teams. These guys are just like us doing our homework. We don't touch it until there's an urgency about it, or we don't really focus intently on it until there's an urgency about it. But obviously, let's start here. I know I'm big on trying to decipher what rumors mean, and this is a period where there's a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation. There's a lot of intentional disinformation. There's a lot of subterfuge going on at this juncture of the season, a week ahead of the draft. I mean, I saw there's a report today that from, I think, Jonathan Givony on his ESPN mock draft saying, the Hornets really like Scoot Henderson. He had a great workout. I saw another person tweet, it might have been a joke, it might not have been someone reliable, say, Scoot Henderson failed his workout. We have the news that Bradley Beal is going to come onto the market, that Washington is finally going to trade him 3 years too late. But let's start here before we get into kind of the Magic specific information. As someone who follows all this stuff, is kind of clued in a little bit to what's going on as far as what front offices are doing. How do you read rumors a week out from the draft? What are you looking at as you see some of these reports, as you even do some of your own reporting on what front officers are going to do, knowing that everybody's kind of doing things for their own purposes right now?
Yeah, heavy dose of skepticism is, I think, the best way to put that. I'll spend a lot of time looking at various things, and one of the things I always try to view is, where is this coming from and who does this benefit, right? So let's use that Scoot Henderson example today. Scoot had a great workout with the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, well, that benefits Scoot a little bit, right? Because, hey, he's still in the mix for number 2. But it also really benefits the Hornets because if they know New Orleans or maybe anybody else who wants to trade up to get to Scoot, hey, you can't just trade up with Portland. You might need to come to us, right? If you really want him, because he's still in the mix for us. So those are the kind of things that, comes out and you kind of filter through it. Some of them are a lot more straightforward, right? Fred VanVleet is going to decline his player option. Well, that's very straightforward. He's going to decline his player option. We move on. But anything that is like a trade rumor or a signing rumor, I really start to look through of like, who is this benefiting you? What is this kind of out there, for when it's, strictly a report, rumor based kind of thing, because that's the kind of the first filter that I run through is, who does this make sense to have this out in the world for? Because for everybody, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, let's bring this back to the Magic. We know the Magic don't leak anything. Like if something is coming, like typically, and I tell this to all my listeners, I'll repeat it here. If something's coming out about the Magic, I am pretty much like 95% sure it's not coming from the Magic, that it's someone else using the Magic as leverage. And like, look, I like my philosophy on everything is if it's a reporter, if it's someone that I know is trained as a reporter, I don't doubt that someone told them the information. Whether it's true or not isn't necessarily important. I believe that people were told that what they are reporting, whether that is what actually is happening or whether that's like, I always tell people, like I tell people around the deadline, reports are usually like 2-3 steps behind where people are actually at. Like the reason things are leaking, there's a reason everything leaks. Like you said, you got to find that reason. And so when it comes to the Magic, they're so tight-lipped. We saw how they operated last year. Woj called them like the greatest kind of like draft process that's ever happened, how they kept everything so quiet. And, I've heard some rumblings that it was never close, that they were taking Paolo the entire way. We've seen the Magic. We know the Magic are fairly quiet, but there have been some whispers and some rumor and some rumblings that, the Magic would be a team that would like to trade up, whether it's to take Scoot, whether it's to take Amen Thompson. The draft, you told me that you're kind of up on this draft a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about some of what the Magic could do on draft night, but I want to bring it back to this kind of bigger philosophy and kind of the bigger thing that this offseason feels like it's going to be about for the Magic. How quickly do you anticipate the Magic trying to kind of push some chips in and make their team good? Is I guess let's start here with the draft. Is this a team that could potentially trade some chips in to, as I would say, take one more bite at the apple at a high level player? It sounds like Scoot Henderson or Amen Thompson, at least if you believe the rumors, are the guys that they'd be trying to trade up for. Is that the right path for a team in the Magic's position? Like how essentially what I'm asking, how aggressive should the Magic be, whether that's trading up in the draft or potentially trading around elsewhere for some veteran players?
Yeah, I think there's two answers to that. It depends on the approach, right? I think getting aggressive in the draft is fine. It's not that they're out of roster spots, but you're starting to run a little tight on roster spots, right? You're no longer restarting with, all right, we got our first guy kind of coming in, and then we're going to go forward from there. Now you're 7-8 guys in to what you feel is a pretty good core group. Now, of that 7-8 guys, I would argue probably like 4 are really the core players that you're really moving forward with the other guys are kind of in the next tier. And then the rest that's the supporting players around the roster. So when you're that far in, I don't have a problem if it is, hey, we're going to package 6 and 11, right? To move up to get the guy we really, really want. I don't know that gets you up to 2 or 3, just those 2 guys. It seems like that they're drawing kind of a hard line in the sand there. If you really wanted to get up in the Scoot Henderson range, but that should be enough to move you up to 4 or 5 if you wanted to get Amen Thompson, unless, the Rockets or, it's slipping who has the 5th pick right now, Detroit, unless they're really sold that he's their guy. Right. So that becomes a question mark there. Right. But that should be enough to get you in the range. And I don't have a huge issue if you do that, just because you're no longer looking to fill out an entire roster. Now you're trying to get targeted fits. I feel slightly different on the veteran side of it. I don't know that I'd be, hey, let's throw 6 and 11 to go get, a 2nd tier veteran guy to come in. That's too far for me. That's not really right. Now, if you could do that to go get a guy that is one, young enough and good enough to fit with the core for the next, let's call it 3-4 seasons, then I'm fine with that. If if it's somebody who's that good, but that's not going to take just 6'11", right? Then you're talking 6'11 plus, probably plus. Who else are we putting in the trade? What else are we going to do?
And
So that
maybe taking back a bad contract on
exactly.
top of
Yeah. So that becomes a little bit, you kind of start going back and forth on those things, right? Where it's a little like, that becomes a little more risky, right? Because I don't know that I think they're going to be good enough anyway without anything else right now to compete for a play-in spot next year, and probably maybe even the 6th seed. We'll see. A lot of that depends on how do all these other teams shake out through the offseason, but they should
You
be
could
in that
say
range.
health too.
Yeah, hell yeah. Oh yeah, obviously. Without a doubt. Especially with this team. But you should be in that range. Now the question becomes, do I want to go all in, trade my picks, go get a veteran who puts us in the 4 or 5 range? Is that enough better? Or do I say, let's bank on internal improvement, using a bunch of the cap space we have and going out and, getting a guy that way? That's probably more the direction I go. But if you want to do its package to move up in the draft, to get one more potentially core piece to your young group, yeah, by all means, you'll make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point about like the kind of different levels of aggression, and maybe that's certainly not a point that I've brought up here. I've kind of thought of the one more bite at the apple idea as saying like with 6, you take a big swing. With one of these 2 picks, you take a big swing. You go for an Oscar Thompson maybe doesn't fit you perfectly because the shooting is still an issue, but rangy defender, big guy, a little big playmaker, kind of fits the athletic profile that you go for. And then you go safer with the 2nd pick with Jordan Hawkins. But I know one of my drafting like ideas or one of my draft philosophies is kind of what Utah did with Donovan Mitchell. If that's your guy, if you look at this draft class and you determine like we need Scoot Henderson to make this work, or Amen Thompson makes this whole thing work. Especially with how loaded this Magic team is with young guys, I think it would be a little silly to bring in 3 rookies with the 36th pick as well to this roster. I know something I've been banging the drum on is this team needs to get older. They were the 3rd youngest roster in the league last year. I mean, they don't quite need their Horace Grant quite yet, but they need someone that's been around the block. Like, we'll get into the Gary Harris decision here in a minute, but like, to me, losing Gary Harris, even if Jalen Suggs is going to start on opening night, that's still a huge loss to me, not just because of his skill as a shooter, but because he's the only 30-year-old on the roster, especially, I don't even think he's 30 yet. I think he's still 29. He's the only veteran on the roster who's been anywhere. And especially as this team begins to try to compete for a playoff spot, they need some of that veteran presence. So I'm certainly not against it. If 6 and 11 can get you, I think maybe moving up 1 spot to 5 might be giving up a lot. To 4, maybe you could get some more future draft capital back, a high 2nd, like Houston's probably not going to be good for a little while. So a 2nd is like essentially a 1st round. It's kind of like a scot-free 1st round pick. There's definitely the opportunity there. I think this battle between patience and going all in is kind of the storyline for this Magic team. Like you said, it feels like with how they finished the last 3 quarters of the season, they were 29 and 28 the last 3 quarters of the season. That's good enough to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. And, I think that a lot of what this team has certainly believed in and shown us throughout Jeff Weltman's tenure is this ability to be patient. Like every summer, it seems like we're anticipating the Magic doing something big. We thought about in 2019, 2020, certainly after they like kind of flamed out of the playoffs, they just kind of were treading water. I think we were all expecting like, hey, I know you're waiting on Jonathan Isaac, but it might be time to make a big move if you want to take this thing forward. And it seems like outside of the trade day on the trade deadline, March 2021, Weltman is value continuity. And so it feels like the most I would ask your team building opinion on this. Is that the right decision? And especially with a young team that still has a lot of unknowns, like, what does Markelle Fultz look like his first full offseason after rehab? Can Jonathan Isaac get himself back on the court and give him a chance? Wendell Carter's coming off a career season. Can he establish himself as a top center? It feels like the Magic would also benefit from giving a lot of these guys their one more bite at the apple to kind of prove themselves and see what they look like and see how they grow as on a team that has some more expectation now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the worst mistake young teams make is let's try to be good right now, right? We're already kind of good. Like we're where the Magic were. Where, if one of two things either happened, if we had started to play better even 1 month earlier, or if there was one more month left in the season, we're in the mix for the play-in, right? But you got to be really careful because that's not your end goal, right? Your end goal, or at least it better not be your end goal. If that's your end goal, we've got a lot of problems. So then it becomes, all right, what really is to be gained if we go and make these moves? Now, all that said, with this specific team, I think there are, to kind of not restate all the guys you brought up, but I think you can bank on a heavy dose of internal improvement, right? Paolo's just going to be more efficient next year. That's just going to be how it goes. Even if it doesn't necessarily always show up in all of the numbers, he's going to be a better player. Franz is probably going to, figure things out a little bit more with his on-ball stuff in that. And that's not saying he's not good at it because he's good at it today, but it's just going to be a little bit better. So those are kind of my two main guys, right? And then after that, it's everybody else is like, all right, let's see, poor Jalen Suggs. Can we just get him on the court for 65, 70 games, straight basically? Because what seems like it happens is he plays 10, 15 games that aren't so great. Then he plays about 10, 15 games that are pretty good. Then he gets hurt. And then we start it all over again. And that's where you just, let him get out there, please stay on the court long enough to figure things out. But the other piece that I got to look at is, right, they can get to roughly 20 million-ish in cap space, a little bit more than that, with very little ease. That's without sacrificing a single rotation player. Really, you're just making it happen in that case. But if they want to be major players in free agency, now you're getting into some of the rotation guys got to go. Guys like Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac, Bol. Those guys would, if you wanted to wipe the decks clean, then you're talking $40, $50 million in cap space. So two things. One, if all of a sudden we get a report of the Magic are waiving Gary Harris and waiving Jonathan Isaac, well, then Weltman has some plan in place to use all that cap space to do something huge. Because he's not going to do it just to do it, right? He's not going to go into the summer with, hey, I've got all this money and wave it around for no reason.
He's not trading Tobias Harris for Brandon Jennings and Ersan Ilyasova just to clear the cap room, just to have it. Like look, let's be real about this. As much as you're not supposed to talk to guys before June 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern time or whatever time it is, everybody knows. If let's say the name out loud. If the Magic are really getting Fred VanVleet, we're going to know June 30th because Gary Harris is no longer on the team. That's June 30th, Garrett, is the guarantee date for Gary Harris's contract. If Gary Harris is a free agent, that means the Magic are doing something and they're not waiving him unless they know they're getting the big fish that they're going after. That could be a trade because it could be absorbing salary and open cap space, but it means they're doing something big. We're going to deal it's going to be like a tsunami. The tide's going to come out before it comes in.
Yeah. This is not, they're no longer the just in case team, right? Let's throw, let's wave money around and try to get 2-3 free agents to sign here. That's not the way they operate anymore. And that's not going to be how it's done. All of that said, I don't think that's the way it goes at all. I think they're going to guarantee Gary Harris. I can tell you every conversation I've had with anybody around the team, and this isn't inside information by any means, they like him. He is the quote unquote adult in the guard room. And it's not the NFL where you have position rooms, but that's kind of how they say it, right? So among that guard group, he's the one. Yeah, and to your point, he'll be 29 in September, I believe it is, of this year. Right? This is his age 29 season coming up. So it's not like he's a super old veteran either, but compared to the rest of the guys on the team, he might as well be. So they like him for that reason. And plus he's good, right? That's a whole other thing.
He's still good.
And he
need to
retains
get him more shots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know you and I have had that conversation multiple times of like, would you please get this guy more involved? But anyway, he retains his trade value there. With Isaac, that one's a little harder, right? Because you could create almost 10 million extra in space if you waive him, if you stretched him even more, which they probably wouldn't do. But the challenge is you've been through so much with him that I think this is all right, rather than creating 10 million and still having to eat 7.6, let's just bring him back. We'll figure it out. Maybe it happens. He stays healthy and we go. And then if it doesn't, I think after this year, if it's another disastrous year with injuries and he just never gets there, then you waive him free and clear and you move on. And at that point, nobody can blame the Magic, right? It'll be, you've done everything you could have ever been expected to do, to with this guy. So that's where, and then Bull's contract is so comically small, it just doesn't even make sense to waive him.
Yeah.
And I get it, right? I know people who call it the bowler coaster and everything that you go through with him, where the son's like,
he was essentially
awesome.
A rookie last year. Like, we gotta be real.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know I've been on the train, be like, I think they'll keep him too, but I struggle to see what his role is. And so he's kind of back in the same spot he was in Denver, where he's not getting opportunity, but he showed enough that if you treat him like a rookie, he can still be something. You can still use him in certain lineups. Again, if it's almost, and the Magic have a few players like that. Chuma KK is Chuma KK is coming near the end of his rookie contract.
Yeah.
You've seen enough that you're like, okay, we can still give this a chance. But like, I think this is the key here. You can't rely on it. And I think that's the big task for the Magic this offseason is, you have some of these nice players, but they're not players you can rely on. And if you're trying to be a playoff team, if Okeke has to make a couple spot minutes in the rotation, or he earns his way back in the rotation, that's fine. But you need to cover yourself a little bit for it too.
Correct.
You need to cover yourself and say, like, at this point, we can't rely on Chuma Okeke to be that 3-and-D wing that we need. Jonathan Isaac,
he's just not gonna be, right?
You can't rely on him. If you have him, great. It's a bonus.
Yep.
And it just – no, go ahead.
No, that's what I'm with you on that. Yeah. For a lot of these guys, it's almost like we're coming to the end of these experiments, right? And some of them worked out good, some of them did. Markelle Fultz worked out pretty good, right? I think we all feel pretty good about that one. OKK didn't really go great. Jonathan Isaac's just been a mess, right? Nobody's fault, just kind of how it's all gone. And then Bull is it's fine, but I look at him as the number's so small, it's barely above a minimum. There's no reason not to keep him. So my basic going in standpoint has been, they're going to take the 20 or so million that they have. They're going to use that intelligently. They'll probably let the first wave of free agency go by, that first wave of, max deals and big names changing teams and all that. And then it'll be, oh, look, player X, who's pretty good, is still sitting there. And he no longer has a $35 million team to go to. Hey, we're over here. You're a really good fit for us. How about 20? How about, 15 for a 25 million guy? Where are we at? And they may say, yeah, we'll do a 1 year or a 2 year deal. Well, we'll do those things because then that allows them to keep all their own flexibility. And those guys may say, man, if I'm taking an under market deal, I don't want to lock in long term. And that's where I think the Magic will pick off 1 or 2 rotation players for next year, but as bargains, or they'll be kind of sitting there as, oh, you're making a big trade and you need to clear 15 million in salary for a guy who's actually not bad, but you got to move it. Hey, hi, here we are. Let us know. And that's a great place to be in, right? Because that's where you are snagging values off other teams in ways where it's not, in effect, it's not costing you anything. It's costing you ownership dollars to pay it out, but you got to do that for the most part anyway.
You're paying that anyway. You got to pay the salary floor anyway.
Yeah. So go make it happen, right? Go get a couple guys, because the whole playing for max guys, that's just not where they're at right now, and I don't think it makes sense for them to even try.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk a little bit about how the Magic can or where the Magic should kind of allocate some of those dollars and some of the other extension decisions that are coming, because this is actually a big offseason. I would argue we're kind of in the last time that the Magic can play around as if money doesn't mean anything. I know a lot of people who say, like, Jonathan Isaac's got to give you more for $17 million. And I'm just like, his salary is meaningless. Like, money doesn't mean anything with this team. We'll get into some of that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we have to say a quick word from our friends over at Game Time. I went to Tampa Bay Rays game a couple weeks ago. Had a great time. Got my tickets through the Game Time app. Everything on it was just so simple and easy. And even the parts that were difficult, Game Time really helped me out. And the parts that were difficult were MLB's fault, not Game Time's. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. It's the fastest-growing ticket app in the country for a reason. You can get images of your seat before you buy. I know I use that, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. They give you price comparisons for other seats in the area that you're looking, and tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. And even if you do, the people at Game Time are super, super nice. Helped me out with an issue I had with the MLB app. Again, it was MLB's fault, and gave me my tickets on my phone. Very easy to get in and out of the game, especially down at the Trop. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Before we get back with Keith, it is that time of year again. It's the Locked On NBA Mock Draft Special. It's here and bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please, please, please be kind to me. We did this mock draft a few weeks ago. I do it very differently now. I'm still very happy with how I did in the mock draft, but I'm sure most of you, I know I got pilloried. I know I got criticized a ton by the panel, by everyone, but I'm still pretty happy with how I did, although I do it completely different now. That's the nature of the draft. Check it out today, the Locked On NBA Mock Draft Special, available on the Locked On NBA Big Board and wherever you get podcasts. I will spare you what I did in that mock draft, Keith, because I'm sure even you would criticize me for it. I thought at the time I thought I was reaching a little bit, but still did okay. I won't spoil it here. But I filled 2 needs. I got my shooter and I got a backup big that I was very, very happy with. I'll let you guys guess what that is or just listen to the podcast. But Keith, like we said before we went to the break there, this kind of feels like it's either this summer or next summer. It's kind of the last summer where the Magic are kind of playing with house money. It feels like money is not important. Like it doesn't matter. Like they still got Paolo on his rookie deal. Franz is on his rookie deal. So your 2 most important players are under market salaries. You know, they've really worked hard with the way they've structured a lot of their salaries and their contracts to have all of this flexibility to be able to do anything they want. At some point they're going to have to spend some money and spend it seriously and lose some and risk some of this flexibility. If there's been a criticism of Jeff Weltman, it's that he's played everything pretty cautiously throughout his entire tenure, whether it was the rebuild phase or the playoff phase. He's played things very cautiously to allow him to make any kinds of moves. He's never done the all-in move. Granted, I'll say this. The 2 big decisions he's made as president of basketball operations, blowing up the team at the deadline in March 2021 and drafting Paolo Banchero, knocked both of those moves out of the ballpark. Say what you want maybe about the Denver deal. The Chicago deal set them up really, really well for the future. That was the surprise deal. That was the deal where they had the leverage and the bargaining strength. He knocked that deal out of the park. The Boston deal obviously didn't have any strength because Fournier wasn't expiring. Aaron Gordon deal didn't have any strength because Gordon had already gone public with his trade request, and you're just kind of getting whatever you can get. And hey, Gary Harris has been good, like we said. Knowing that, then, you said the Magic are going to kind of still bite at the edges a little bit. They've obviously got this young group that they're fostering, and it doesn't seem like they want to make maybe that big move to kind of get in the way of Paolo and Franz's development. And I'm all for that. I think, bringing in Fred, even a guy like Fred VanVleet, yes, he can play a little bit more off the ball. He's a little bit more of a volume shooter. That's still going to take the ball out of Paolo and Franz's hands a little bit. Having said that, then, what are the kind of types of free agencies, or what are the free agents, or what are the needs do you think the Magic need to address this time around in free agency?
Yeah, I think the tricky part becomes, are you looking for a starter? right? If you're looking for a starter, then where, right? Is it going to be someone who pushes Franz down to the 2? Is it going to be someone who starts at the 2? Because I think you're pretty well locked in with 4 spots. It's really that 5th spot. Is it, we're going to roll with Suggs, hope he grows into it and stays healthy, or do we need to replace that spot? So another wing, just because another wing in the rotation is always going to be a good thing too. Ideally, I would want a wing with a little more size. I know some people have mentioned, well, what about like Gary Trent Jr.? I don't dislike the idea at all. I just feel like he's another guard, and I feel like you have 4 pretty good guards already for the Magic, especially if you're keeping Gary Harris around. So then it becomes, I'd rather see someone who's more 3 that could maybe play some 2, or maybe 3 that could play some 4. That would be ideal, because I think the backup big situation is a little messy there. So now backup big being your primary target in free agency always feels a little weird, right? Because it's like, cool, well, we better be awesome then if that's all we really need. So I think what I would do is I would invest the bulk of my resources in going and getting another wing if I was going to do that through free agency. And of course, the draft will factor in here as well. But if it was just take the draft out of it, because best player and figure it out, I would look for another wing, like I said, a wing with size. So, not that these guys are all guys I would definitely super chase after, but if you could get involved, and you felt like the time was right to spend, 20 plus million, Kyle Kuzma could be a really good, fit as a scoring wing that you could bring in and play. And I think he could play just fine with those other guys there. If you wanted to go with Gary Trent Jr. Again, I don't have a huge problem with that. A little bit cheaper options potentially. You could go, if you wanted to go straight shooting on the wing, Dante DiVincenzo, Max Strus could be options. Those are guys that you could go after. On the big line, I think a guy like Trey Lyles could be really good for this team. Can play both the 4 and the 5, can really shoot, can do a lot of different things. Kind of, I think, got overlooked a little bit in a really good season for Sacramento. Jalen McDaniels is a guy you could take a look at. Now, if you're going really kind of under the radar free agents that I think would really fit this team well, Keita Bates-Diop had a really nice season for the Spurs. Yuta Watanabe had a nice season for the Nets. But those guys are guys that's probably, hey, we're going more under the radar, and we're going to go, spend more money on the, the bigger type guys. So those are the guys, and then backup, true like backup center spot, no issue if you roll back with Mo Wagner. That's fine. No problems there at all. No problem if you wanted to bring back Goga Batadze and say, all right, hey, we're going to bring you back and give you a shot, or any one of the 15 veteran options that are going to be there for the minimum. Those guys will obviously still be there. The big thing for the Magic is which kind of relates to the first discussion we had. I don't hate the idea of packaging the picks. We're just starting to run into roster spots a little bit, right? There's only still 15 standard roster spots, and we are starting to run into those a little bit there. So that becomes a whole other conversation around, all right, do we spend more on one guy simply because we can now, and we may not be able to 2 years from now as the team starts to get a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, and like to that point, like to me, I know I've been banging this drum, and the options, frankly, are not great in free agency. I think the Magic do need to upgrade their backup center spot, and again, I know that's not maybe like the kind of sexy or the biggest like
sure.
Go spend $15 million on a guy that's going to play 12 to 20 minutes a game, 20 to 25 minutes a game, but like Wendell Carter has never played more than 67 games in the season. I think like 65 games in a season. As good as Wendell Carter is, and look, I think Wendell Carter is very good. I think he's in a big prove it season. I want to see him in the playoffs just to know if he can be a playoff center, because like he's good, but I still have my questions. But I do think the Magic, if they're serious about competing, need to be ready for Wendell Carter to miss 15 games a season. They need to be ready for him to be out 15 to 20 games. And that's not a knock on Wendell Carter, but we've had 4 or 5 years now where this has been the case. They just got to be ready for it. And look, Mo Bamba looked like he'd be a high level backup, someone who could even play alongside Wendell for a little bit. He struggled in that role. I have no problem bringing Mo Wagner back, but to me, Mo Wagner is like the perfect third center. Bring him in when you're short on depth. Bring him in when you need a little offensive punch. But at the end of the day, you look at the second spectrum stats, no center who played at least 50 games in the league this year had a worse defensive field goal percentage at the rim than Mo Wagner. His defensive strategy is to take charges, and teams are happy to challenge him because he will not take enough charges to beat scoring 70% at the rim or 75% at the rim or whatever that number was. I just know that he's the worst.
I'll add to that: take charges or get you so angry and riled up that you try to run straight directly.
And you need that guy.
Yeah,
you need that guy.
And I'm with you. Yeah, he's best as a third guy. You're right, because those are the nights Jamal Mosley should be able to look down the court and be like, "Man, we just need something," and throw him in there for 5 minutes and see if he can energize you. Or the nights, Wendell Carter's out tonight, he can go in and play 10, 15 minutes as the backup, as opposed to being the backup who then has to play 30 minutes. Yeah, that's where it gets a little sideways. And I very much believe there will be a time and place for Paolo at the 5 more. It's just not yet, right? It's just, we're going to break out down the line.
Yeah, and I think the Magic want to experiment with their lineups. Like I very much think the Magic want to try it. But like last year especially, was let's just see what Paolo can do. Like, let's put one thing on Paolo's plate and see if he can handle it. And then obviously he handled a lot of things really, really well. But to that point, then like Paolo's not a rim protector either. Like the Magic are short rim protectors. If you draft Taylor Hendricks at 6 or 11, you can maybe play a lot of lineups at Paolo at the 5 because Hendricks can switch with him. Hendricks can protect the rim a little bit. He's a rookie, obviously, but that's kind of rim. Like the Magic have solid paint defense, in my opinion, with Wendell Carter. They don't have rim protection. And again, this is like, I know I've been hinting at this. My concern with Wendell Carter is that there's not enough rim protection to elevate a team in the playoffs. Like your ceiling is limited if you can't play above the rim a little bit. And again, who knows what Wendell Carter can be. I want to see him in the playoffs just to prove me wrong, prove my hypothesis wrong here. It's all theoretical till we see this team in the playoffs and we understand what their real flaws are. And so to me, like, again, as much as the Magic want to make the playoffs this year, and I think this is like part of the equation in free agency, and like you said, keeping some financial flexibility, still being nimble enough to change as conditions change, but the Magic are balancing like two really delicate things here. They're building for a future. They see that future. They're still playing for that future, but like management isn't saying it, but all the players are saying it. We want to be in the playoffs. And this team's, I think, still got to do some work to get themselves there. Like they got the talent. If everything breaks right, you're right. They should be there next year. But if everything breaks wrong, like say an ankle or leg or something to that effect, things could go south really, really quickly. Like as much as we want to own the 29 and 28 portion of the season, we also have to own the 5 and 20 part. That team still exists. Like they've grown out of it a lot. They like, I know I said this on the podcast yesterday. The fact that the Magic were a 500 team last year, didn't have a losing streak longer than I think 3 games after December. Like that's a huge step forward. They also didn't have a win streak longer than 3 games after December. Like they were like bouncing back and forth. And like, look, as much as we shouldn't celebrate being a 500 team, that's still an important step of the process. And the team, they didn't get all the way there, but they got close.
Yeah. And let me interrupt real quick if I can, because it's not, you lose me entirely when people say, well, we were 500 from like March on. Okay, great. Half the teams don't care from March. Half of them are trying to lose. And then the other half are like, we're just trying to get to the playoffs healthy. Or maybe it's like more like thirds, right? Third is trying to lose. A third is, just trying to get healthy. And the other third is like, hey, we're still playing. So those lose me. But when you're talking, months of 500 basketball, that starts to feel a lot more like, okay, we're probably a 500 team, right? That's where I feel like this team is I completely agree, because this is where some Magic fans have come at me, because I'm like, guys, you can't just throw away the first 2 months of the year because that doesn't tell the fun part of the story. Like it still all counts. There's still 82 of these things. We didn't play 57 of them. This is not a lockout COVID impacted season, right? This was a full 82 game season. But to that point so let's celebrate that. Let's look as that as a data point to where we're going. but everybody's going to have a downswing in there. And what you can't have is you don't want to have that downswing be our base is 500 and then our downswing takes us under 500. You want to be, our base is enough over 500, 4, 5, 6 games above 500, that when we have the downswing, if it knocks us down to 500, okay, we're still fine, in the step forward season. Let me throw a couple names at you just because I'm curious, because you seem to be big on the backup big portion.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking of.
These are 3 names that I kind of like. I'm gonna give you 4 instead.
Okay.
All unrestricted free agents, so no, like you don't have to mess around with offer sheets or anything like that, because that gets super messy. So the 4 guys that jump out to me: Naz Reid, I think could be
that's the name I'm thinking of.
Yep, could be a really interesting target, because I think as much as he would like to start, I don't think that starting opportunity is necessarily coming, and he'd certainly play more in Orlando in that 3-man big rotation with Paolo and Wendell Carter than he is with Gobert and Towns.
You can play him a little bit at the 4 too. Like you can move him around. He's a good 3-point shooter for his size. Like he isn't a classic rim protector, but he's energy guy. He can block some shots. He's going to throw his body around. He's going to be physical. Not like Naz Reid is probably number 1 or number 2 on my free agent list. I'm a little bit worried about the cost. I think he might be a little bit more expensive than I think the Magic want to pay, but I think you could easily get him on a fairly favorable 3-year deal. And I think he would make this team better, like significantly better short-term and long-term. And
that's where I think you're in a spot where you can overpay a little bit, right? As long as it doesn't get crazy. I'm not saying throw $20 million at Naz Reid, but if you had
I'm afraid I feel like somewhere between 15 to 18 is probably his number.
Yeah. And it ideally, I'd like him a lot more around 14 or 15.
Yeah.
But we'll see, right? So
you always overpay in free agency. That's always the warning. You always overpay in free agency, and especially if you're a team like Orlando.
You're going to be competing against the teams that are using their non-taxpayer mid-level, which is about 12 million. So you may not need to go all the way to 18 or hopefully not 20 if you can say, hey, how's 15 sound, right? And if that's good. So the other 3 guys, first is a name people probably going to recognize. They're probably going to be like, really? Dwight Powell, not bad, right? If
I had him on my list too.
Yep. If you need to go with another guy.
Injury questions are the only thing with him.
Yep. But can bang, rebound, play defense.
Solid screener, just very solid player. Should be relatively cheap, comparatively.
Exactly. Another guy who I really like, he played really, really well for most of the year before kind of falling out of the rotation. Had a better year over the last couple years, but his role got bigger, maybe exposed a little bit, but still not bad for a backup level guy. Chimezie Metu is a guy who can actually play. A little bit from the Sacramento Kings. And then my favorite kind of under the radar big that a lot of people know how good this guy has been and fills a huge need for the Magic as far as being a rim protector and a guy who can really help on defense. Drew Eubanks, who's been with the Portland Trailblazers. He is played really, really well in Portland. And this is, again, none of these guys are going to be guys who, it's outside of maybe Naz Reid. None of these other 3 guys should be guys who break the bank. They should all be guys you can get.
Yeah, you shouldn't pay more. You shouldn't be paying. I mean,
you should be able to take just above the minimum to get those guys, and that should be enough.
If you're letting Batadze walk, you're paying the same amount for Metu or for
a little bit.
Those are back end guys.
And I think those are guys too where they. Obviously, Eubanks is somebody I like a lot just because of the shot blocking and finishing ability around the rim. I think he's somebody who can step in and start. He started a lot for Portland over the last couple of seasons with Nurkic being out at the end of each year, and he's held up. So that's a guy, again, we're not going to be, you and I are not going to record a special Locked On Magic. Oh my God, the Magic signed Drew Eubanks show. Let's break.
You will not be getting a Locked On Now on that.
Yeah.
You'll get a full episode, but you will not get you will not get an immediate reaction podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not going to wake me up at 2:30 in the morning and say, we got to record now. Right. But those are the moves that help you win, right? Are the ones that are just good, solid moves. And, and again, none of those break the bank really. You're in a pretty good place. Those are depth guys you can add for, somewhere between the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe even you go out to a 4th year if it's friendly enough, because it's not going to hurt you. Those are the kind of moves I think that make a lot of sense for this team.
Before we move on to, because I agree with you, the backup center list is very thin. Like this isn't a draft with good center options. Like Derek Lively was in Orlando earlier this week, according to his Instagram. I'm sure he was visiting Disney and not doing anything else.
Sure.
Star Wars land is there. It's Velocicoaster's birthday.
Magic would never bring in a Duke big man on the slide.
I know.
Never.
I know. It's not like he had a tour of the facility when he was here with the team for the NCAA tournament. The backup, the center options in the draft in free agency aren't particularly strong. So I do think that it's very possible that the Magic kind of stick with what they have. I think they bring back one of Mo Wagner or Goga Bitadze. I don't think they bring back both. And I think, unless Naz Reid is their big money guy, which, I like him. I think that there's a lot of potential there, but I could also see like this could be a bit of an overpay. He's a little bit injury prone. If you're not going to rely on him for what you need to rely on, some of those other options are also certainly cheaper if they decide to spend their money elsewhere, in free agency. Before we move off of kind of free agency this year and think about beyond this year, which is also part of the equation, because the Magic will have to spend some more money very, very soon as well. What should the Magic be in on some guys who played well in the playoffs? Playoff performance always seems to make everyone a lot more excited about guys than maybe they should be. We all expect Austin Reeves to get a ridiculous contract. It sure sounds like the Lakers are going to try and match him or do an arenas provision poison pill type contract. I'm not going to get into Austin Reeves, but I have two names that I want to go over from the playoffs that I think should be on the Magic's radar. The first is Bruce Brown. What do you think Bruce Brown's market is going to be? I know percentage-wise, he's not maybe the shooter that the Magic might want. And, Denver probably inflates everyone's shooting because Jokic is such a great passer and soaks up so much attention. I was in on him last year in free agency. I thought the Magic should have chased after him last year. Is he someone that's in the Magic's kind of preferred price range with what they want to get done this offseason? Is he someone that they should go after? And then I'll give you my second name after that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a bigger non-Brown family fan of Bruce Brown than me. I think he's great. I wanted, a whole host of teams. And when Denver got him for the taxpayer, I instantly called that one of the best signings of the summer last year because he's just such a smart player. And the other thing is, too, this is a guy who all he's really done since coming to prominence as a player is played with great players where he knows, all right, my job is to cut. My job is to make open jump shots, play defense. And and then
a little bit of point guard sprinkled in there.
He can.
He agrees.
Apologies, that's an Amazon delivery that the dogs got fired up over. They were both dead asleep on the office floor, so I think the bell was made them go nuts. But anyway,
they're doing their job.
Right, that's it. Yeah, they're letting us know. So anyway, Bruce Brown. I think he'd be a great fit on this team. The one challenge, he's a little small, so he's not he can play up. He can definitely guard threes without a doubt. So that part I'm less worried about. He just, now you're kind of further muddying that waters of that guard mix if you go with him. But I think it's fine, right? You just kind of figure it out, right? You let the best ones surface and play them on there. So yeah, I'm a huge Bruce Brown fan. As far as his market goes, so here's a little bit of the challenge, right? The Nuggets can only offer him $7.8 million because of where they're at. They have non-bird rights on him, so they can't really pay him much. The Magic could they could go to $20 million if they wanted to in first year salary. Other teams are probably going to be around the taxpayer MLE. So it's really going to come down for Bruce Brown is, do I want to take more money from another team or do I want to stay here in Denver, take less money than I could probably get on the open market, compete for another title, and then I'll kind of cash in a year from now, either with Denver with my early bird rights or with another team a year from now. So that's the decision he needs to make. I know he said right after the finals, I want to stay, but a lot of that's
everyone says that.
All that stuff. So I'm not going to go too worried about that one.
Yeah, and I believe he has a player option for next year, so you could just opt in and stay as well.
I think he'd opt out and resign just because that gets him more money. But either way,
and assures his bird rights with Denver. Yeah,
it all amounts to the same thing.
He only needs sign a 2-year deal at that 7.8 if he thinks he's going to be good 2 years from now. Denver comes back, they can pay him. They got his bird rights. They can keep him that way.
Or they could go the early bird right next summer, like the Bucks did with Bobby Portis, which is how they kind of parlayed that. Was one thing. I think Brown's profile is a little higher than Portis's was at the time, but it's a pretty similar situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other name, played really had some good moments in the playoffs, very inconsistent throughout his career, but I think would be a player that would fit a lot of what the Magic are doing. I believe he was Bruce Brown's teammate in college, Lonnie Walker from the Lakers. I believe he's a free agent this summer. I think that he'll have a little bit of a market. I'd be interested. Again, if some other guys pass up, like had a couple solid performances in the playoffs. There's some inconsistency there, but I think he fits the Magic's profile a lot too.
Yeah, a guy I think we all thought of was going to be more than what he was for the Lakers after some good years. Again, got caught in a crowded guard room in San Antonio with DeJounte Murray and Derek White for the early years of his career. Then they had Devin Vassell, and it was just a little messy for him to break through in 5 minutes. But now, with the Lakers, like you said, he was okay, but then kind of fell out of the rotation after they made all their trades, and Austin Reeves came into prominence and became kind of their guy. But then, resurfaced in the playoffs with some big performances. Can put the ball in the basket, can really shoot, can score. So, I have no issue with that. Again, probably comes pretty cheap, not going to really break the bank. Big thing is going to be, I think the Lakers are now in a position where they're probably going to be re-signing a lot of their own guys and just more or less running it back. So if they think he's a part of that, you got to pull him away from there. But he may look at it and be like, I can go to Orlando and play a bigger role there. Again, further muddies that water of that guard group, right? But you're going to treat that guard room with kind of a right now and what are we going to do over the next couple years lens, because Gary Harris may only be here one more year. Who knows what happens with Cole Anthony? Did you extend him or not? Who knows what happens with Markelle Fultz? He's only got one more year left on his contract. Do you extend him or not? And those are kind of the questions you're going to have to ask as you move forward with that group.
And that's actually where I want to go next. Because, I think kind of hanging all over this, like we said at the beginning of this segment, 20 minutes ago now, this summer, next summer, kind of the last summer where the Magic have like funny money. Like money is not an object, throw a lot of money at a guy. So what? Like, Jonathan Isaac's contract's going to come off the books either next year or the year after. You got Franz's extension coming up at the end of not this season, but next season, I believe. Paolo's the year after that. Jalen Suggs is going to be coming off the books here for restricted free agency. So you have this like huge decision to make. We know Jeff Weltman has always valued his flexibility. And, as we talk about some of these free agents, it would not surprise me if Weltman tries very, very hard to front load the contracts like he did with Wendell Carter. I don't know how long agents will go with that trick and how long agents are going to be cool with that. I personally, I know how I would feel as a work, I'm happy the Magic are able to do that. It gives them a lot of flexibility and power, but I know how I would feel as a worker if the more I work for someone, the smaller my paycheck gets. That is a real emotion people have. Let's not pretend that they're also not employees of an organization. As much money as they do make on these contracts. And, who knows, maybe they kind of deal with the agents like, hey, just give me how much I'd make over the life of the contract. You guys get them, I know some players set their money up like that so they can get their salary they can get a paycheck full year rather than just during the season. That's either here or there.
I always just one thing on the descending contracts too, because I'm with you on everything you said, except for like guys like you and I don't know that they're going to pay us less to bring in somebody else to prop us up and make us better. Where in sports, it is kind of the assumption is like, well, if I get less, that's more money you can pay to somebody else to help me be better and win. So it is slightly, but I hear you. Like you can only go so far with it, right? Because eventually somebody's going to be like, no, dude, I've seen where the salary cap is going. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to be making, 5% of the cap because I gave you a deal that descends to $12 million, down the line. I want to be, I want to be, at the number I want to be at. So, yeah, they're going to have to get probably slightly. I also don't know about they like to throw non-guaranteed years on the end of deals and those things. I don't know that they're going to be able to continue to do that. But I do trust that they'll get creative with their whole front office group. They do a pretty good job with those kind of things.
For sure. But that gets us to the big decision of the offseason. I think it's as big as the draft is, as big as free agency is, what they do with Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz, I think is a huge, huge, huge deal. And it wouldn't surprise me knowing how Jeff Weltman operates. He takes care of his guys. It would not surprise me if they take care of both this offseason. It would not surprise me if Cole says, you know what? I'm going to play this year out as 6-man, see how good I can be, see if I can get a bigger number in the offseason. I'm sure like Markelle probably feels the same way, although I'm sure he's very grateful for the opportunity Orlando's given him. I guess, this is all playing together. Free agency, the draft, these extensions, the new collective bargaining, which I want to ask you about here in a little bit. How should the Magic approach these extension talks? And what factor are they going to play in all the decisions that they're making before they get to extension season? I mean, it's always extension season. They could announce, they could probably announce an extension tomorrow, maybe, or they have to wait till after July 1st. But before we get to like extension season, like in the dead part of the calendar.
Yeah. So what ends up happening in this case is, and I wrote this with Cole Anthony when I did the predicting the rookie scale extensions, is over on Spotrac. Everybody can check that out if they're interested. With Cole Anthony, your challenge comes in with him is for it to be the right deal for the Magic. It may not be the right deal for Cole Anthony, where there's a pretty fine line between the two. And if I'm Cole Anthony, I'm a little bit looking for, let me see what Emmanuel Quickley signs for first in the same draft class. If he extends for a pretty big number, he's not going to get the same number as Emmanuel Quickley. He's not in that stratosphere, just as a known commodity on an already pretty good team. But I think Cole Anthony might be saying, hey, I can do a lot of the same things he can do. I can score, I can play make. It's not the same level of defender, but I can do a lot of things too. And I think what happens there is that may be, oh, he got 20 million a year, 22 million a year, whatever it is. All right, you know what I want? I want, 15, 16 million a year. And I know that sounds like a big number, right? And this is where, hey, I always, just to pump us a little bit more on Spotrac again, we put under every salary, we put the percentage of cap under there now, because that's got to be something we all have to collectively reframe ourselves to think, because we are conditioned to think 15, 20 million is approaching a max deal, and that's half of a rookie max deal now. 15 isn't even half, right? 20 is going to be half pretty soon here. So that's
for
where,
reference. For reference on that, if the Magic max Franz Wagner, what is that contract?
I'd have to run it because he's not extension.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No, that's okay. I mean, I could run, but to give you a sense of what it looks like right now on this is it's like this year, a guy coming off the rookie scale, max would make, we're doing math on the fly here, always fun radio. Max could be 5 years, I was told there would be no math. 194.
Could you repeat that real fast?
Yeah. Yep. 194 for a guy coming off his rookie scale deal right now. So that's, players who played it out, this season coming in. That's the lowest level of max. So that's 33.5 million starting salary at 25% of the cap. Totals out to, by the end of the contract, $44.2 million deal, $194.3 million in total. So that's where I tell everybody, 15 million for Cole Anthony. If you thought it was a bit much a couple minutes ago, you probably don't think it's so bad right now, right? You're probably like, that actually doesn't sound too bad. Established guy. Now, if I'm Cole Anthony, I'm thinking, all right, but if you go any lower than that, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to bet on myself having a monster year. Maybe Markelle Fultz gets hurt again, and I start, and I'm really take off. And now in restricted free agency, which the Magic can still control the process, a summer from now, maybe now we're talking more of a $25 million a year for a guy like Cole Anthony. But the reality is right now, I'd go there. Goes much higher than that for the Magic. It's probably not enough value for me. Maybe I could be talked into doing one of those, all right, I'll start you at 18 and bring it down each season where we go. But if I'm Cole Anthony, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm in the middle of my career. I'm a guard. I should be fine for the next several years. I've never really had serious injuries. I've stayed mostly healthy throughout my time. Like I don't want to do that. So those are the kind of things you're looking at. Markelle Fultz, slightly different story because of the injury history. He's now hopefully back, and I'm going to lightly knock on wood so the dogs don't go bananas again. But you got to be a little bit more cautious, right? And he's got 1 year left after this year. It's non-guaranteed. So if you extend him, that becomes guaranteed. But that's where you start looking at it and saying, all right, we could probably do this. We could probably give you 20 plus million a year. Feel pretty good. That's a good rate for a starting guard. We feel pretty confident in you. And again, those numbers, those guys don't break your bank, right? They're not messing up your cap sheet. They're not putting you in a place where it's like, oh my gosh, we can't possibly, fill out a roster with the new CBA and all the rules on everything. Because you do have to be thinking, I know this sounds absolutely insane because he just finished his rookie season, but you're already thinking, 4 years from now, Paolo, let's hope everything goes the way we want it to go. He's on a max deal. That's going to be probably 50 plus million or, right in that range by the time he starts that deal. That's probably about where the cap's. That's probably a little high, probably 42, 43-ish in first year salary. But that's where we're headed, with all this stuff, where the cap is going.
Luckily, no one reads the Orlando Sentinel anymore, so there's no polls on that. But yeah, no, and like this is like the big thing is we got a new collective bargaining agreement. It comes in. It's effective next season.
So the CBA starts this July 1st. It'll
Okay.
come in. It'll start this July 1st. So in 2 weeks or so is when it starts. There's parts around I'm calling it the super tax. The real term is second tax apron. That is really for the Warriors, Clippers, teams like that. There's some of that comes in this year right away on July 1st. There's some that is phased in over time. Basically what they're kind of sort of doing is giving those teams, hey, we're going to give you a grace period year to kind of get your stuff in order. So if you don't want to be that expensive, you have a year to figure it out between this offseason and the trade deadline and everything. You can get your stuff in line and figure out where you want to go with this. So some of it comes in. For the Magic, of the stuff that's coming in, very little of it is going to impact them today, right? Most of it is stuff where they're going to be looking at it and saying, all right, maybe if we got to re-sign all these guys to a ton of money, which generally means we're really, really good, so we're probably wanting to do that. If that's where we go down the line, then that becomes a slightly different story for them.
Yeah, and to that point, I think the Magic could end up being a team, if they maintain some of their cap space, could be a team that helps a Golden State get a little bit closer to that second apron or helps a team stay under that second apron. And that's why maybe the Magic don't spend all their money this summer, because there could be some opportunities as one of the cap teams, and a team that wants to compete. So there might be some, it's like an expansion draft. There might be some valuable players out there that teams just can no longer afford that the Magic could get in on for very minimal costs. Like I'm a big believer that free agency isn't really how players move around anymore. Yes, James Harden might be jumping ship to Houston this offseason. There's still players that move in free agency, but the big players, those star players, if you're looking to add that third star next to Paolo and Franz, you need to be able to trade for them. And so like, I'm a big believer that, if you can take care of Cole Anthony today, and if it costs you a little bit more, that's okay, because the cap's about to spike again because of the TV deal. But you need to have salary slots. Like, again, I mentioned everyone I've had a lot of people say like the Magic need more for Jonathan Isaac. He's the highest paid player. And I'm just like, no, that doesn't matter, because money isn't important right now. But you don't also drop Jonathan Isaac because he's a 17, and I hate thinking of people as assets, and that's the worst part of this business, but he's a $17 million chip that you can put on the table and say, what can I buy for non-guaranteed Jonathan Isaac? And especially for like a team that's at that second apron, that non-guarantee for next season becomes like, that's free money. That's literally free money. That's a get out of jail free card in a lot of ways.
I've been thinking about with the Magic a lot, especially with the Warriors and the Clippers. They get in a spot where it is like, all right, we tried the guard thing, right? And Jalen Suggs never really got there. And, Cole Anthony, tops out as a six man, which is fine. That's not the end of the world. But we really need, another guy who can fill it up as a scoring guard. You could maybe get, a year from now, Jordan Poole or Norman Powell from the Clippers, if those teams are in a position where it's like, all right, we got to reshed salary, or not reshed, but just shed salary to get our stuff realigned so that we can make some other moves and do other things. You could probably pick one of those guys off at a relative steal because of you're in position to be able to do that. That's why I don't think to kind of put a bow on everything we talked about with the strategy, I don't think they're going to be doing any super huge, big moves. Like we said, we'll know if they all of a sudden up and waive Isaac and Harris and holy crap, the Magic are going for 50 million in caps. Something big's coming because they're not doing that for nothing. But I think it's probably going to be, looks pretty similar. A couple moves around the edges. Again, probably nothing you're going to be jumping up and down and going bonkers over, but it's all designed around, let's fill some holes. Let's bank on internal improvement, better health, and then let's move it forward and get into a spot where, hey, when it's time and we can really now take advantage of one of these teams that needs to make a trade. I mean, Boston may be in that spot. You could maybe pick off a Derek White or even a Malcolm Brogdon. And at that point, the Magic may be saying, all right, we are one more veteran away from now we're in the mix for the 3 or the 4 seed a year from now. We really feel good about where we're headed as a team. And, we can do that. And that's what I think they're going to do, is do everything they can to kind of preserve their flexibility while, hey, it's mostly about internal growth here. It's about, us getting better as an overall group.
Yeah, we've talked for an hour on this. There's obviously a lot more we can talk about with the Orlando Magic. We could talk easily for another hour on this. I won't make anyone listen to that for now, and I won't make us do that for now. But Keith, thank you so much for coming on, talking to us a little bit about the offseason moves and what the Magic can do. Where can people find you if they want to read that article on your predictions for the rookie extensions and all that?
Yeah, you can find me on Spotrac. All my written work is up there. Now you can go over there, look, that rookie scale predictions is up. My Orlando Magic offseason preview has been up for a little while now because we do those in order of elimination, from the playoffs. So unfortunately for the Magic, hopefully for the last time, that was written before.
It wasn't that late.
No, hey, it was better. It was better than being done in before the trade.
They were the last Eastern team eliminated.
Yeah, I love it. It was great, man. It was a really fun, to watch them run all the way to the end and play meaningful basketball in March. The beginning part of April was really fun again. So, but you can find that there. You can find I just posted today. I went through all the 40 remaining player and team options and made a prediction on what happens with each one of those. We'll have a similar type thing, which should be of interest to Magic fans for non-guaranteed players, at least ones whose guarantee dates is before the middle of July. The ones that stretch out to January, we're not going to spend a lot of time on all those. But those are all up there. You can also find, if you like this kind of talk about rosters and transactions and the salary cap, NBA front office show with Trevor Lane and I, we do that 5 days a week usually, where we're there. We'll be live for the NBA draft for the at least the first round, probably into the second round. We do a live show there where we take questions and react to everything that happens live. And then we do live free agency shows every night. We do them later in the evening, 11 midnight Eastern, around that time when things start to slow down a little bit. So we'll have all those coming here at the end of June and beginning part of July. So a lot of good stuff coming in the fun off season part of the year.
Yeah, definitely check out Keith at all those fun places. I know I usually try to keep up with everything that's going on around the league. Keith is my guy for all contracts and offseason stuff. Definitely check him out where you can. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places on the podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. For all my everyday listeners, on tomorrow's episode of Locked on Magic, we'll talk a little bit more about some draft prospects. We'll get into Derek Lively, probably talk a little bit about Jarris Walker, 2 players. One we believe is already worked out with the Magic, one that is going to be working out with the Magic very, very soon. And if you haven't done so already, please check out my subtext. I'm starting to post some stuff on subtext to preview the draft, talk a little bit about the draft. You can interact with me directly. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnMagic. But until next time, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked on Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked on Magic.